All right. So I guess today Robin's cornered me enough to talk about you wouldn't like me when I'm angry. Uh, Most people always think of me as this very chill person, but I struggle a lot with anger. And for a long time, it actually didn't really let me live my life. And now, actually, as we started off our journey and moved into our full timing and living in our 28-foot Class C, I realized that I became very time rich, and that pulling a 180 on that helped me to realize how much I can actually enjoy life. And so I'm here to share some stories a little bit about that, and about that, how that anger was actually linked to shame, and how that kind of controlled my life for a long time. I was going for a run with Robin this morning, and we were talking about this, and I had a pretty vivid image that I wanted to share. And this goes back to high school. I discovered wrestling my sophomore year, and something clicked. It was the most amazing experience for me. There was never a sport that felt so intuitive, at the same time so violent and so perfect for me. And from the time I discovered, I realized, like, this is all me. I'm going to go all in. I'm going to get my kudos. I'm going to control my life in many ways. And so my first year, I took a lot of butt kickings, and I was pretty emotional. I hated losing for as long as I can remember. I still hate losing. I can't stand it. And my senior year, I actually was getting really good at what I was doing, and maybe lost a handful of times. But those times that I lost, were very, very traumatic and affected me, I think, a lot more than the average person. If you're a wrestler, you probably have this chip on your shoulder. And I think it was in city finals. I ran up against a young man, and I lost 2-1. Very tough loss for me. Second place in city. Pretty competitive. Should have been proud looking back to it. Like, I wish I would have enjoyed that moment way more. But I felt this shame of, like, not being worthy. And wrestling was providing me this worthiness until it didn't. It's sort of like that Ricky Bobby ain't first, you're last. Well, there's a reason that's funny, but at the same time, many of us, like, well, that's true. If you're not first, you're last, to me. And so at the time, that was no different. And I remember, first off, after a loss in the finals, I sat in the locker room like a baby and sobbed for an hour. My coach is like, "Hey, what's wrong with you? Like, you're second place. You've only wrestled 3 years. This is an amazing accomplishment." Wasn't good enough. But I was feeling this unworthiness then. And then I get in the car and I come home. And again, head home. My parents are having company over. I walk in the door and I just want to slink by and not have that conversation. And I remember I could still visualize that moment when they're asking me, like, "Hey, how are you? How'd you do?" And I was like, well, I got second. I could feel it, like, I could feel that emotion building up in me. Like, I didn't even want to get any words. I just wanted to go to my room and just sulk. And the reason that was important for me to reflect on is because I remember thinking, well, to them, like, "You're second place. Wow, that's amazing." Well, I just didn't feel worthy. I didn't even want to share that shame with them, and I carried that. And it was one of those things that still was very evident as I started to graduate from high school. And then wrestling sort of kind of the team that at San Diego State got cut, so I didn't even have a chance to pursue that. It defined me, and it helped me get some validation, but I probably couldn't win enough to fill that void. And so what was next? Well, I had already developed. I got my first weight set when I was in middle school. And that's part of the reason I think I saw some success when I was first wrestling, is because I was so darn strong. I was training since I was in middle school, and certainly had a chip on my shoulder. I felt bad for sometimes the competition, because I was like, "Here, take this. I got all this to unload into you." So I just started weight training, started strength training. And guess what? I got a lot of validation for that. I was the workout guy. And everything was about getting PRs for a long time. And well into our relationship and opening our business, everything was tracked. For like 2 decades, I could have showed you exactly how many reps, what weight I lifted, and it was all about progress. And as long as I was getting better, I was dealing with that, in some ways, dealing with that shame.
Yeah, and in some ways it was interesting because, I mean, we're like literally, like, through all those childbearing years, Victor was working a ton, but then he'd also go and work out a ton, which made him, just one, always tired, remember I already told you that compassionate wife that I was. I'm like, oh, I've been up all night. You can't even run with me 2 miles. That kind of stuff. But we told you about it triggered adrenal exhaustion. And like, I don't know actually if we've gone into full detail, but it was horrible. It was really, really hard year of our life when he hit that. And at that time, I remember him showing me, actually, let me back up a little. Right before that happened, probably that year before, I remember he used to always get mad if he didn't hit a PR on his bench press. And I'm like, I mean, he had, so numbers, you were probably 315 and you probably weighed 175.
Yeah.
And so it was good. It was the numbers. But what would happen was be like mad if he dropped to 310. And then, but he'd get on the scale and be like, oh, but I'm 172. Like there was this weight. And so then he'd start playing it the other way. He'd be like, all right, I did 320. And I'm like, yeah, but you just put 20 pounds on.
20
I'm just
pounds,
kidding.
of course. There's the compassionate wife.
And I go, this, first of all, the entire concept of like, we're going to get into this with Enneagram, but this whole shame complex is not what I struggle with. I struggle with another one. But I go, who cares? It's 5 pounds different. I have a baby that's screaming here. This one I can't, like, runs down the street if I like turn my back. I got to teach these. Why does 5 pounds in a bench press even matter? But it mattered. It definitely mattered.
It did because of what it was doing for me. It had nothing to do with the workout, right? And so I've talked to a few shrinks, for example. I use running a lot. And I always tell people will ask me, like, hey, I need to lose weight. Should I run? I'm like, well, do you like it? And then they'll go, like, well, no. I'm like, then don't run. But the other end of the spectrum is that, literally, if you talk to a lot of psychologists, they'll tell you that people are sometimes running from something. Well, weight training sort of did what for me was compensating for something. And those compensations that we put in our life just get to the point that sometimes they don't work anymore. And that's sort of what I went through is I got to a point like, okay, this isn't fulfilling me anymore. I can't get any stronger.
The big reason we wanted to talk about this twofold. One is that literally we see so many people's health deteriorating,
falling apart
fast right now. And I can tell you, like, back 10 years ago, 11 years ago, when his health deteriorated really quickly, I could have easily blamed it on all these other things that could have been. We could have just said, oh, well, you have to work a lot of hours for a mortgage payment. Or we just had misinformation at the time.
Sure.
And so, or even, bad belief system tied up into something that wasn't serving us. And so I hope that this story, if you feel like
if this resonates with you,
that maybe looking at your health from a different perspective, flipping that script. The other is it opened the door. I mean, like, really, Victor was like what you describe as a midlife crisis. It was 10 times worse than that for about a year.
And it's very interesting. The midlife, that a lot of people told me that. Andropause. There were lots of things being thrown up, but look, the symptoms were so vast and so varied, like that it couldn't have been any one of those things. But it also did bring us insight into, like, well, maybe this is what midlife crises are more about.
Yes.
Yeah, this physiological, psychological. We know the mind and body, and it's actually what's very interesting is that all along I didn't even realize it, but the way I work with my clients has been to help them with these with these
Yeah, because it's not
elements.
something it's a big deal, Victor, sharing this with you.
I didn't want to. I like to just give an image.
But because in a subtle, really gentle way, he does work through this and if you're a client, Victor's like, he's nurturing very small steps. Me, I'd be like, let's just rip that Band-Aid and get into it. And that's okay. I think there are some people who are. I know I personally am just like, yeah, let me rip the Band-Aid. Tell me what I need to work on. If I just didn't think of it, I want to know. I want you to tell me. Victor's more like, can we like deliver this really subtly? Like, let's not say it so bluntly. And he does that with people. And the cool thing is, people always say, like, wow, it's really cool because you make me physically strong first. And that's really important. That's the second. It's really important to have this physical, external drive to start with, because it's hard to just like dig in and be like, oh, like you feel, there's three emotions that most people feel: shame, or their core desire, their internal, what they're driven by intrinsically is to overcome: shame, fear, or anger. Okay, you guys want to guess which one mine is? Considering
Anger.
And I can tell. And so if I tell somebody to take an enneagram test, a lot of times they think like their anger is if you're an 8, 9, or a 1, and they'll think that like naturally they're those three numbers because they're like, well, I'm angry. Well, the thing is, like, yesterday what sparked this is we went rock climbing, and Victor thinks he likes to go rock climbing, but he really just loves me and he wants to come rock climbing with me. But he gets very, very angry. He turns into the Hulk if he tries rock climbing, and pretty much,
Yeah, pretty pissed. Got a lot of anger there.
And so I go, well, see, like, it's not anger that you're feeling right here. It's actually shame. But why does that matter anyways? Why can't we just say like it's anger? Well, until you're aware of that root emotion, you end up.
Well, let me stop you. Like, look, it comes down to this. For me, from a machismo masculine standpoint, I much rather say I'm just pissed. Shame, that sounds like, just yeah, exactly. I mean, I don't need to get into details of what that feels like, so I'd much rather just throw anger on it. But I never realized how much anger was sort of tied into that. And then going back to that triad that she was talking about, if I look back as a reflection of my life, again, showing quite a bit of vulnerability here. I was a kid who started off in school not knowing English. I only spoke Spanish. We're first generation American, and went to school first, second grade. You can imagine, like, I did not know English, and I was in an English speaking school. So the perception was right away, oh, this kid is shy. Well, this kid is more than shy. He doesn't understand what's going on. So that put me into a shell. Not to mention some pretty significant sexual abuse. You can imagine, with those two things in my life, where I was about middle school, as soon as I grabbed a barbell and felt outside physical strength, it started to bring me up in a lot of ways and empowered me in a lot of ways that I didn't feel. And I think this is why I still love what I do. I have a very good client right now that says, like, I just don't know how you deal with people. And I go, well, I can see that because he knows that I'm naturally introverted. I push myself to go to do these videos because I think I can help people. I want people to get to know some of the struggles that I have. But ultimately, why I've been in the game so long is because I know it's not just about strength training. The strength training has an impact on an individual. I see it after week 1. They come in like,
Peter McRae.
yeah, and I've had wives call me like, I don't know what you're doing with my husband, but oh my God, keep it up. And because their libidos just jump up, all of a sudden they become completely different. And the proud peacock, stick out your peacock chest, yes. But so that's one element. But in the end, I like working in this realm because I know what it does for people. I know what it did for me, and then we can get into the juicy parts little by little if people so desire, right?
Absolutely. And it's interesting because this is why we do this, is because he's such an amazing bridge, because I definitely felt that at one point, and then to come another step full circle, I definitely, when I first started dating Victor, that was when I first started working out. I think that was one of the things that it was great. We did that together for so long, and it was a matter of overcoming all of my childhood issues that I had piled on or told myself a story of, and you go through that. And then I know if my story real quick is, once I was done having kids, like, we were great in that child rearing phase.
And we
but
were
as
so
soon
good.
as I was done, I was
12.
like, thank goodness we did it. I was kind of like, there's more to me. There's more to this physical body than just reps and sets. And that's not to say that if you're still in that phase of like, wow, this feels good, that's awesome.
There's nothing wrong with that. I would just encourage you
to like go beyond that, because I know that's kind of that's the journey we're going to be sharing. I'm forecasting my third eye is really intuitive on this one. A year from now, Victor's going to be sitting here telling you why he thinks rock climbing is the most amazing sport ever. Okay?
Well, I still think it's pretty
will it.
awesome. I just know I got hang-ups.
So what happens is he goes on the wall and all those things he's telling you stories of, he subconsciously starts reliving them. He might be only 10 feet up, but he's like grabbing this rock like, no, it's not good. It's not good. It's like Maverick in...
He's no good. I can't engage. He won't engage. He's not gonna be able to make it. Keep sending him up.
And I'm like, or can I show the move?
No, I hate the move.
Okay.
Well, okay, show the move.
Okay, so here's climb here. And pretend like this step. It's like, it's no good. No, I don't like it. And then eventually, because I'm so darn stubborn, and I'm like, nope, not bringing you down, not bringing you down. He makes the move, and I'm like, well, why didn't you just do that the first time? We would have saved 10 minutes. It's like, because I didn't like it.
I didn't like the move. I didn't want to make that move.
All the time, because
Yeah.
I didn't like it. Well, sometimes you just have to do things you don't like in life, but then when you do it,
Rock
like,
climbing, like
amazing
many other
doors
sports, have these amazing sometimes I love 3 points of contact. And the second I have to go to 2, just like I have to grin and bear it, like, and trust that I have the skill set. And of course I have the skills. Of course I have the strength to do it. I have to work a little on my mobility to make some of the moves. But other than that, of course I have the strength to do it.
I mean, really, like he should be out climbing me. Look at those muscles. Look at that build. He totally should be out
She's
climbing
bird
me.
bone. I am not.
But you could do way more pull-ups than
Yeah,
I.
sure.
So you technically,
climbing is
I
not
don't
about
even use my
pull-ups.
feet yet. I'm like a horrible climber. But the point is, surfing's no different. That there's these levels, the staircase we're trying to take people through, and when we're stuck in just fear and we're not even engaging our physical body, that's a huge limitation. And then we want to start engaging our physical body, and then we can go to the next layer of engaging our emotional body, and then our intellectual being, and then getting to that bliss body. You see how there's this energy force that we're trying to communicate to people that you just can't see it, but it's there, it exists. It's the reason people are able to manifest wealth, they're able to manifest amazing relationships, they're able to be time rich, all these things that are possible in the world. It starts with whatever that first step is for you. And so if it's first working out and getting the physical body stronger, awesome.
Yeah.
My encouragement, my 2 cents that I add to all of his stories is that, like, don't stop there. Like, once you get there, I see so many people start with work with Victor and they stop there. They're like, all right, physical, strong. And it's like, oh, but you're untapped potential. You really are like infinite potential inside you. I know that sounds like so spiritual. That'll be the
Tony
other...
Robbins.
Oh, Tony! I thought you said too many Robbins.
No, Tony Robbins.
Yeah.
But it sounds like that, but there's a reason. It's absolutely true. But it's really easy to be like, well, must be nice for you, but it's different for me. And so that's part of the reason we share some of those stories, to be like, oh yeah, he's done blank and blank, and he's working on overcoming that, and you just accept that instead of just accepting that. If you're hiding it or burying it, not so much, because I will tell you this, there's a good chance that my adrenal fatigue that I went through in my mid-30s was a function of repress, and then the body just said, oh hell no, you ain't doing this anymore, take that. Right?
Sure.
And all the symptoms that I felt were just a function of I'd become so far disconnected. And sometimes the challenge, you need to ask yourself this: what are you feeling? What are your desires? What makes you happy? What makes you sad? Well, those sound like very simple questions, but for someone that for a lifetime spends repressing emotion, the danger with that is that you stop really feeling. And this is the common joke. Oh, yeah, it's that person he's emotionless. He doesn't feel anything. There's got to be a lot of pain in there if you feel like someone is at that point, because we become so disconnected from what we like, what makes us happy, that eventually you're like, shit, when was the last time I was truly happy? And I know, because it's a slippery slope. Started to find that disconnect, like, damn, I haven't felt anything in a little while. And then that's where extremes come in. That's where abuses, infidelity, like there's all sorts of issues associated with that. Addiction become just to feel something. And so I encourage you, if you feel any of the things that we just talked about, it's important to like, hey, don't let yourself slide into this. You can script that. You can script where that's going. And that's unfortunate because we don't live in a world where we're really forced to kind of, hey, let's just bring this out and be done with it, move on. Like, that's the thing. You know, I remember whenever anyone asked me and I shared, for first off, I didn't share very many people my abuse. And when I did in my, or even as late as my late 20s, early 30s, when I tell people the story, the hairs on my arm would stand up and I'd have this visceral, like, wow, I still have a lot tied up with this story. And so you have to tell your story many times to offload that in many ways, and then also get to the root of that, what I was talking about.
My favorite book is The Zahir by Paulo Coelho, and that talks about that in one part, that like the secret is to tell your story over and over again. And if I have people work with me, I'm like, that's a key part, is to you know, you have two paths to growth. You have actively seeking growth and healing. And Gabby and I are almost wrapping up our course on this. You have to tell your story in the healing aspect, which Victor's doing. That's really awesome. And then the flip side, and this is harder, I know, for depending on your personality type. If you're not naturally an intuitive person, if your brain tends to think about the past more often, you're SI dominant. Mine's I tend to just live way more in the future. I'm NI dominant. And the next step is to not only tell that story to heal it, but to project out your future self. My hero's journey. Like for Victor, say it was like letting go, healing that trauma, but like, oh, I go and I rock climb, and here I am, I'm setting up, I'm tying in, my hairs aren't standing up on my arms. I feel like really relaxed. I'm like laughing, I'm joking. You're putting yourself in the optimal position before you're actually in there, and you're living it as if your future self is looking back, but you're doing it from now. Yeah. And that's a really powerful exercise to do, because I know I've done it through our travels. The reason we live the life we live is because I would do that in my own self. Like, all right, I'm in Europe. I just hiked 20 miles with my daughters doing Tour de Mont Blanc, and now we're sitting down to a nice meal. And then boom, look, a year later, I'm doing that. And many things like that. And maybe not everything I'll write down, but I'll start visualizing it. I see myself doing it. I think about it. At this moment right now, this week that we've had, I visualized it before. And maybe it wasn't, sometimes for me, it's a lot of times just in flashes and intuition. But, you know, some people might have to start with writing, and then it's going to start triggering that part of your brain that maybe hasn't been tapped before. So.
Yeah, that's pretty powerful stuff. So, I mean, I know if you're anywhere close in my personality type.
So are you in the heart of liberal land?
So you can, struggle a little bit with that, and yeah.
Oh, he's on the phone.
Yeah. I was like,
no,
should
I don't
keep
think
talking?
we are.
No, so if your personality type is anywhere even close to mine, is that you hear that and you're like, that's so far out of realm, right? It still feels like there's just no way. It's real easy for me to kill, still to this day, to kill and lose days, because I get in that anger, shame, that circle, and then I just get, I always feels like pissed. I just get so mad that I can't get into that productive until I break the cycle. Thankfully, meaning her, knows how to snap me out of it better. So it always is incredibly helpful. But at the same time, like, I'm in my late 40s here. I've worked as a trainer for 30 years, and I know my evolution is to help people even more powerfully. But I've always done the compassion, like I've always tried to do everything with utmost compassion and gradual steps, and be there and support people. And well, knowing that I'm boosting them up, I want them to have that transformation, not only that I'm feeling, but that they can feel, to be their maximum expression. And I can see it all over people emotionally when they walk in the door. I don't know if I read emotion. I think ultimately that's what it is. I read emotion, so I know where they are, what state, and what kind of workout to. First off, I'm taking care of injuries, but then just the right workout to like boost them up so they can walk out that door and charge into their life, and do better, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And so you think, we don't have to state it, but just to be state the obvious. It's important to be in a relationship where you can have this kind of dialogue. I know that we have a lot of flaws, and it takes a lot for us to come on camera or in the podcast and share these stories, but at the same time, I know deep down I'm like, we're supposed to do this. We have a message that is important right now, and for a lot of years we kind of kept it to ourselves because we didn't want to share it. We worried what are people going to think, but at the same time,
we're also we're raising so many kids ourselves, and the amount of stress was at a point where
that's true. We have time in our
we
life.
have a little time. The two youngest ones are at a point where like, hey, mom, dad are going to record. Go do this.
Yeah, but we're trying to take an active role in bringing back the family and relationships. I think relationships have been made out to look like a bad thing, and I couldn't disagree more.
Don't you think that relationships are also falling apart because individual development has lacking too?
Exactly.
Right. So so if you love someone and you feel like this is falling apart, and I will tell you honestly, like we'll have a discussion, i.e. an argument, and I just can't see it from her side. I'm like, how is your logic? I don't understand. And she'll say like, God, I don't understand that you don't understand me. And I'm like, look, I ain't that dumb. I'm pretty dumb, but I'm not that dumb. This is a picture. But when we start continue to work on the idea with self-growth, then the communication improves again, don't you think? Like as both come from a good spot.
There comes to an intention. It will hit heads like yesterday with climbing. It was not a fun experience because, like I said, he said he wanted to come climb with us. He got really angry on the wall. I'm like, you're just killing the vibe here. Why do you come with us? If we're just
that's
so
where it comes.
happy.
I ain't first, you're last. You ain't first, you're last. But then I go back to what that was.
And then he just is angry the rest of the night, sleeps it off, and the next morning it's like, well, we're better about them. Like, do you want to go for a run with me? I'm like, you have to just, you nurture these things along, and like, yeah, let's go for a run. And what's the core desire? I want to be with you. If that's what you look at each other, in the end, if you look at each other and think, I want to be with you, then put aside your egos for a second and be like, okay, well, what's the root issue here? What are you struggling with?
And honestly, I almost feel it like icing up, like freezing. And there's more than one ways that we can relate to the freezing process in the human body. But for me, when I get that far angry, shame, whatever you want to call it, I am ice cold, like, and then I thaw. And when I thaw, then I can have dialogue. And so if you feel yourself like that, well, first off, you might need to communicate with your significant other that I'm like, hey man, I'm no spot. Give me blank amount of time. Get yourself to thaw. Figure out the steps that you can thaw to help come into that area or that spot so that you can have a better line of communication and get down to the nitty gritty.
For me to aggression or engaging in the dialogue and engaging in the conversation, whatever the issue is, it's like makes me feel better. I think for me, avoidance is the worst thing, and so for probably a lot of people, avoidance is the natural go-to. Like we just bear, like Victor was saying about repressing the emotion. I highly encourage, if you're repressing the issue in your relationship, that's okay, like at first, but it's going to eventually explode into something that you don't really want. So internally, if you can stop and think like, okay, long term, do I want this person? Do I want to share this life with this person? When I get really upset, I think about like, man, when my kids have their own kids, do I want my kids to have to come see me like I did and then go see their dad? Like, no, I need to work on this. I need to like put my ego aside for a second and figure out what the real issue is. And then on top of it, we could be his family. It's like, do you want to go celebrate Christmas with parents who hate each other and talk? Like, you don't want that. You want your kids to get to bring their kids to you. At least I do. I want my kids to come in and be like, hey, grandpa's here. Look at it. Victor's going to be the most amazing grandpa in the world anyways, and I want to see it. So even if he can't rock climb, that's okay. I don't mind him not rock climbing.
But I'm persistent as hell. So
there
will be some images of me leading at some point. I just need to visualize. And drop the shame. So like, I hope this podcast is helping you. If you have any more questions, can leave them in the comments, reach out to us. This is all our development as well as coaches. For me and my personal training, taking it a step further. For Robyn, she's been on the mindfulness coaching for some time, and it can be a pretty powerful tool for everyone to integrate. And if I were to be so blunt, is that if you are taking care of yourself and you're really into wellness and health and working out, this is the elephant in the room. Okay, don't leave. Even if you're into gains, I like, to me, if I want to be the strongest person possible, even in the weight room now, like here, approaching my late 40s, I'm like, holy smokes, I've created more space for that capacity to go up, right? So because I've unloaded some of these things, you're going to unleash your potential. You use a lot of your energy repressing and holding that down, or not in that development. So even this, one of the awesome silver lines, you want to run faster, offload some of this. Born to Run, they talk about that when runners want to get faster. The coaches was talking about doing community work, and they're like, how is this related? It's related.
Absolutely. All right, thanks. Sorry about the little bit of noise, but it was too beautiful out here to not record here. So if you are listening on the podcast and you're like, sounds like cars in the background, it was cars in the background.
We just had one. It wasn't too bad. I hope you guys had a good sound there, and you tolerate that, because again, there's more than, if we're only recording every time we're in a perfect sound studio, like, it would not happen. And so this is live from wherever we are. Where are we right now?
St. George, Utah.
St. George, Utah, on the
Can't
campground.
get myself to leave. We're supposed to leave in a few days. I'm like, it's just so amazing here.
All right.
Thanks.